All right, guys, we're going to talk about strengths. How have you guys enjoyed this book so far? We read part 2 this last week, which was, I forget the title of it, because, maximizing your team. Thank you. Part 2, maximizing your team. Any general thoughts, or we dig in on some specific questions, any general thoughts on what you read? Anything resonated with you? Any of the CEO examples that they gave? Maybe you saw yourself or your boss, or you saw, man, I wish my boss did that. Think about your strengths. I'm assuming you've all taken your strengths test?
Yeah.
Yes.
Were you surprised? Were you surprised at any of your answers? Any of your top 5? Were you upset? Were you jealous that you didn't get another one? Yes? Yeah, mute out, what did you want to get?
So my number 1 was learner. Number 2, deliberate. 3 was relator. And then 4, intellection. 5, input. And I just see this huge space in influencing. Like, am I lacking everything there? So it just made me, and I mentioned it to Ruby when we had a one-on-one. I'm like, what happened? Nothing?
I know.
Very strategic thinking, all of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're very strategic. But yeah, I have nothing in the influence category either, if it makes you feel better. So, of course, that's Jeremy's number 1 is in the influencing category, communicator, which, shocker, right? So it makes sense, I guess, right? I'm like, okay, he's really good at that. He's not so good at the strategic thinking. So it's good that I'm good at that. But who else was surprised? Yes.
I was very surprised because there was 0 for influencing. Yet influencing is core to what I do. Like, I'm literally having to deal with resistance at work and trying to, promote what the value proposition is of what I do, et cetera. And so that's just core to who I am as a practitioner, yet this assessment. So I'm curious, I don't know what that means.
Well, I was going to ask, are there any of your other strengths? Could you see where those are being used in an influential way? Like, could you identify, okay, I don't have influencing, but something else that strategic.
Yeah.
Got it. So you're figuring out how to influence, even though influencing is not necessarily in your wheelhouse. Love that. Who else? You were surprised. Yes, Vivian.
So I took the test in 2019, and
Well, 2 things were repeated, and that was strategic and relator. But this time, self-assurance didn't come up. Now, I love self-assurance because all my life people have told me that I'm stubborn. But then I read self-assurance and I was like, oh my goodness, this is why. So when it didn't come up this time, I was like, wait, have I changed? Am I better? Am I less stubborn? But it was really good because everything else is actually pretty apt. It's me, yeah.
So you were disappointed self-assurance wasn't on there?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? What's different between Vivian today and Vivian 2019?
I would say maybe it's not my top 5, but it's still there.
For sure.
But learner was there, and of course I was mostly strategic. I had learner, ideation, responsibility, strategic, and relator. So I also didn't have any influencing this time. But the thing that I did also come to realize was responsibility, which it's a good thing, but it's exhausted me over the past few months because the fact that I'm really, excuse me, I'm pretty much the kind of person anyone can trust to get things done. And that's good, but then everyone just waits to the last minute, or they just don't get things done because they know Vivian's gonna fix it. So that was something I've been trying to kind of like drop off and push back, and that was a challenge in my previous job. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's why. So it was also good to know and to discover.
That's great. That's great.
So we looked at this, Juan and I, and what it confirmed was we were really a power couple.
Oh, yes. I like it.
I think the only one we have together is Achiever. And I have 4 different ones, and he has 4 different ones. And I was shocked.
You thought there would be more similar.
Yes.
And so then I was happy that it wasn't, because that's what it meant, was that we are able to take 9 different strengths, because we had one that was overlap, and use those 9 strengths and point them toward our son, our school, our business. We can point those 9 strengths there. And
Now, do we do that all the time? That's a different story, right?
but we do it enough. We do it enough.
It's a great perspective. It's a great perspective. I love that.
I wasn't surprised at all. I think what this did is that it gave me words to really kind of give me the terminology to understand myself even more. And there were some things that the way they were mentioned, it really brought to light the negative sides of some of the kind of like parts of your profile. For Achiever, there's this line that, man, if there was ever a line that captured my life, it says, "Your relentless need for achievement may not be logical, it may not even be focused, but it will always be with you. As an achiever, you must learn to live with this whisper of discontent." And that line just resonated with me, because no matter what situation I walk into, I'm always looking for things that need to be improved. And I can't quit until things get to the way that, the best that they can be. And it applies in my work. It applies for when my family is looking for a new coffee maker. Like, I'll return things 10 times until I find the right thing, and I just cannot live with myself until it's the way it ought to be. So it actually gave me advice. Like, you just need to learn to live with that whisper of discontent. And for us as believers, it helped me, maybe not so much live with it, but invite the Holy Spirit to that. Because if you're constantly living with a spirit of discontent, it's really hard to appreciate the good things in life, the good things that God is doing. And I already knew that. But it gave me some really good terminology and really things to bring to the Lord for all the 5 different areas, for Him to just kind of just transform that and use it in the best way possible. I can't say I was disappointed. I think a lot of these for me, like mine were analytical, input, achiever, and learner, and intellectual. So I wasn't disappointed necessarily. I think I already knew a lot of these. And I took this test in 2012, so 11 years ago, and only one was the same. And so a lot of them had evolved from, I think I had one that was compassion. There was a lot of them were very outward focused. But over time, I've become more introspective, more of a thinker, more of a processor. So only one has really stayed the same in the last 10 years.
That's cool. That's very cool. Thank you for sharing. I love that. I think any test like this, right, it's a mirror, right? We can hold it up and we see ourselves in it, and something resonates and goes, oh, that makes sense, right? Jeremy, recently, we took a little 10-question quiz. You may be sorry if I'm stealing your thunder about it, but just it's a little Tony Robbins, quiz, right? What you're motivated by, and his answer, it just clicked for him, right? And it was like, that makes sense, right? Something that maybe we fight against, and all of a sudden we see it on a paper and we go, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, this is just how I'm wired, and there's relief in that in a way. So,
Thank you.
yes.
Yes, I was a little surprised. My number 1 was belief. Not totally surprising though. I thought I would have been more of an achiever, but that still is under the umbrella of executing, so it does make sense. However, my top 5, 3 of the 5 are strategic thinking. So I guess I'm a little bit of both, but belief is winning out somehow, which makes sense. And I love how it kind of like explained the believer. It says people who are especially talented in the belief theme have certain core values that are unchanging, and out of these values emerges a defined purpose for their life. That's true.
That's true. Even from the things that you the things you share, Nikki, here about your core values being played out at work. I mean, that's just a continuous theme that I see. It's just a part of who you are. So I recognize that. Ms. Gerwine.
Hey. So one of my biggest ones was futuristic.
Yeah.
And I like what you said with just giving a certain word for what you think that you are, because I always call myself delusional. Now I'm futuristic, so now but even when there's things that I don't see, I'll say the completely opposite of what I'm feeling, you know? Like I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so fat. And it makes me want to go to the gym. Like, oh my God, I can't wait to go to the gym. It's my favorite place to be, even though I'm dreading going there. I did that this morning. I did not want to go. Like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm so good at this. Delusional, but futuristic.
I really love it because it kind of tells a story of who you are.
Yeah.
And for me, one of my first principles in life is know who you are. When you know who you are and you go out there in the marketplace or whatever, nobody can define you for you. So for example, a communicator, I know, like, I just found out like my strength, my gift is my words. I can speak. I didn't know that before. I was just thinking I motivate people, I empower people. It's one of the things that but now I know it's a gift. It's a calling. So now going into the future, I'm futuristic too. It's just like delusional, you know. So right now I'm thinking, how can I cultivate my gift more and nurture it now that I know who I am? So if somebody is telling me that I'm kind of disorganized, I'm not mad, because that's the truth. That's who I am. But what are my strengths? I'm futuristic. I empower people. I'm a communicator. I think into the future. I don't look at the past. So I just say that to say all this, that whatever we get from this exercise, take it as this is who I am. So when you go out there, no one else can define who you are, because you already know who you are, and you can thrive and nurture that gift, whatever that is for you, and just take it into your future.
Love that. So on those lines, thinking about your gifts, your strengths here, and where you're at in your life, in your current position, in your home, in your job, who you're on a team with, whether that's a personal team, your husband, like we were talking about with Dr. Lisa and Dr. Juan, whether that's a work team. Do you feel like you are in a sweet spot based on your strengths? Or do you feel like, man, some things, you know, like you were sharing, Adiola, about I'm influencing people, but yet influencing isn't in my top strength, so help me make sense of this. Do you feel like you're in a sweet spot? Do you feel like you're on the right seat on the bus? Or do you feel like, man, maybe I should look for something else?
My number one was a learner, and that's what I do. At Houston, I'm at a higher level of institution to teach, and I really never thought that was going to be my number one, but that it was my number one. So yes.
Love that.
One thing I was surprised, I just said I wasn't a ranger. I'm trying to figure out how am I a ranger, because I'm so disorganized. I'm trying to get it together still, you know, so. But it said it's an executing thing, and I know I've made a few executive decisions that I wasn't supposed to make that could got me talked to a few times, but you know, so that's why I feel like this is it. This is further my belief that I do need to start preparing for something greater, because where I'm at, I'm underqualified.
Not being utilized.
Yeah.
Your strengths are not being utilized.
Yes.
Love that.
I think so. For my 5, I have positivity, adaptability. Appreciate you. Adaptability, harmony, and includer. And I was really happy with these 5, especially I think for right now in the season that I'm in. But I think for me, like it kind of, because 4 of those are relationship building, and then 1 of those were influencing, which I'm really happy about. But I think as I get older and I get into more leadership positions, depending on wherever God has me, I think at some point I'll need to learn more about executing and strategic thinking as well, because I think those are some things that really set leaders apart. And I think, you know, it's cool to always be happy and have a positive vibe, and I think that's always amazing, and that can always be used. But I think especially when you're at a point of being a CEO or even being a pastor, like those positions are required you to be able to play both sides. So not just be super positive, but be super happy but then at the same time being able to see like, okay, like, you know, this sucks right now, and we're not gonna avoid it.
Yeah,
We're
be
gonna try
negative.
Yeah. Ooh,
There's
you know what
nothing
I
wrong
mean?
with the little realistic.
Yeah. You know, and I think like, and I think for me, like right now, like I mean, to call myself out, like I'm not really one person that likes to face negativity. So if there's like bad vibe, like PJ was saying earlier, I was kind of like, yeah, let's keep that far away. You know what I mean? Like that's not the energy we need. Let's be happy. Let's be positive. You know what I mean? But in reality, like life doesn't work like that. And I think if I'm going to grow in my leadership, I think those are some things I really want to try and expand upon. But I'm also comfortable with the fact that I have these 5 because I think it's a lot easier to learn those strategic and executing skills rather than, you know, having somebody who can execute in a strategic but doesn't know how to look at things in a positive manner or be able to build relationships with their employees, their ministry, whatever there is. But yeah.
That's great. That's great. Along those lines, just as the chapter talked about, right? We have to surround ourselves with people that are different. So many times we want to buddy up, or you know, we feel comfort in someone that's the same, that thinks the same, that moves in the same ways. But really, there's strength in pairing up and creating a team of opposites. Jeremy and I are opposite. You know, I used to have belief. It wasn't on my top 5 this time, but that was the only top 5 strength that we shared last time I took it, and I was like, no, this cannot be right, because the way the way his belief plays out completely different than the way my belief plays out, based on all the other things in the mix, right? And my perspective, my worldview, the lens in which I see the world, my belief looks very different than his, and so I was like, no, we are not the same. We're very different, but I love it because we create a good team, just like you guys were talking about. So I think along those lines, thinking about your teams, right? Whether it's those that you lead or those you're being led by. For example, if you have a boss that's all about positivity and woo and harmony, right? And you're a high achiever or a maximizer, right? How does that work? How do you do that?
I don't think that those are opposing forces. I think being positive undergirds everything. And yeah, I credit being an eternal optimist as the gateway for positions that I have had the opportunity to serve in. I'm a self-declared eternal optimist, and it's worked for me. So.
Love it. Teach me your ways.
I'm sorry, say that one more time. What did you just say? You're a
professing eternal optimist.
Eternal optimist. That's Jeremy.
my new bio on Instagram.
Jeremy's like, Mr. Adaptability, everything's great. And I'm like, the world is falling apart.
No way, man.
Everything is bad 99% of the time. No, I'm kidding. I'm not that bad. It's like 96% of the time.
Well, I would say positivity is good, but like in my line of work, I'm a proposal manager, and we have to be really strategic, especially depending on the client, because if it's like a government contract, every word can become a lawsuit because you're proposing something, so you said you were going to do it. So I have clashed with bosses who feel like, oh no, it's okay, it's fine, everything's. I'm like, no, it's not. So sometimes those details that I get into are what irritated her. So we always clash because I was always trying to help her understand that even if we can see this thing and say it's a finished work, no, but there's so much that goes into this and we can't just brush it aside. So there was always that problem, and it's not like I'm not a positive person, I am, but when it comes to work, and I know the ramifications it can have for us in the future, I go into those details, but she was not about details. So we clashed a lot.
So where's the line in standing and walking in your strengths and also honoring the authority or the leadership that you serve under or alongside?
Great question.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to answer it. Great question.
So where's the line between standing and walking in your strengths, but also honoring the authority or the leadership that we serve with?
I was just thinking respect, respecting each other's approach, and respecting that each person has a perspective and brings something, and just trying to lovingly coexist, I would say.
Just like it was mentioned in the book about working as a team and everybody bringing in ideas, there are times you're not going to agree. your idea may not be the one they go with, but you also have to learn to be a team player and just, push forward whatever idea that the company decides to go forward with. You can always go back and, think about it, because sometimes your views are not always correct. Just reflect and see why every other person in the room is decided to go with something, and you may be surprised to find something valuable in there too.
That's good.
I think when everybody's ultimate goal is to have the same, a positive outcome. In my experience, I've been working on this project, and I'm very optimistic. I just think nothing is impossible, especially when you backed up with faith. Nothing's impossible, period. So I'm a dreamer, and it said that on here too, futuristic, period. So, but he's more realistic. He's like, no, this is logical. Like, no, this hasn't. And I almost got offended. I'm like, which side are you on? Where's your faith? Yeah. But I realized, I know at the end of the day, we both have the same goal. This is the project that we want to see come to completion. So I feel like, as Nikki said, having respect and knowing that we're all on the same team. We all want this to come to completion. Going down the best route to make it happen the best way is what we're gonna have to do, and just respecting each other's outlooks.
I'm gonna hand it over to Ruby.
Okay, so we are going to do a challenge. Has anybody in the room done a marshmallow challenge? Yes. No. Okay? So these are the rules, okay? I have one of the cups here. With 20 sticks of spaghetti. Yes, please, thank you. You have 1 yard of tape, 1 yard of string, and you have 1 large marshmallow. Okay?
A real marshmallow.
Don't eat it. Your challenge is to build the tallest freestanding structure.
They look like they had a strong start, a good plan. So what was your team's strengths and what was your team's weakness? What was Tommy?
Responsibility is my top, and sure it's again. Belief.
Oh my goodness, you put me in a spot. I can't remember.
You're good. I can find you. You are restorative. That's me. Yep.
So I thought we were just going to go with the house, and just kind of start there. And it was working good for us for a while, but when we got up to the top, it started failing on us. So, and that tape wasn't good. I was hoping we would have had Gorilla Tape. It would have been a lot better. So next time, we'd have made it work with Gorilla Tape. So, yeah.
Our strength is positivity, right?
Yeah, I'm a achiever.
An achiever. And nobody actually took us on the team early on, I just want to say that. I tried. Everybody else, I left us.
But he has the same top strength as Carolyn, so he can be with you guys.
So I was thinking in my head, how can you make something sort of a bonfire? That's what I was thinking too. So, but I said a teepee, right? And so we all just sort of worked off of an idea, and then we built up on it. But I think we worked really well together.
We did, yeah, we really did.
How did it feel for you guys, as the time pressure, right?
That was the worst.
I think every time you
Yeah.
would say X amount of minutes left, the pressure was greater. But beyond that, we thought we had it. We were positive.
Well, first of all, my number one goal was, or my number one strength was learning. So I wanted to go out to YouTube and look up, how do you build a marshmallow tent? So I looked it up, but we ended up not being able to do the YouTube, but it was learn how to do this. We have things that are, I mean, nobody said we couldn't do it. Yeah, so, but our structure didn't last there.
Where did it go wrong?
Yeah.
Where did it go wrong?
Well, I think we overestimated the strength of our materials. You know, the spaghetti, you know, we underestimated, and the marshmallow we underestimated as well. It was a lot heavier than we expected it to be. So I think we kind of skipped over the foundation. We just were, you know, you can only go as high as, you know, you prepare for, and we didn't do that. We just were trying to reach for the stars and then trying to go back and, you know, to the basics after the fact. And, you know, to be honest, I think if we had another minute, we might have ended up with a different situation. But it was surprising to me how quickly that time flew. Especially, I feel like the last thing I heard was 8 minutes left, and then, you know, the next second it was 1 minute. So.
Speaking of 1 more minute, do you guys, anybody can answer, but do you guys feel like you took too much time, preparing, too much time strategizing, and not enough time actually building? Marcy?
So I had a really interesting experience with this situation in last week's case study. So my top on my profile is analytical. It's all about the facts and data. They're unemotional. They're just facts. And so with this exercise and last week's exercise, because they're theory, it was very hard for me to engage. Because, and I understand myself more, being analytical, you wanna, if somebody's sharing something with you, it's not that you're trying to prove them wrong, but you wanna, how did you get to that? So even last week's conversation, well, I'm not a CEO, so why invest my emotions, my thought process, questioning my morality into this exercise, because it's not real life. Now, if I was, let's say I was on the road and there was a car accident and I had to help, do I leave my children in the car or do I go? That's a different situation because that's real life. And I see, and again, this exercise has been really helpful because I already see this in my real life because I have a 9-year-old and his interests go from Minecraft to Pokemon, and it's really hard for me to see how is this important? Because to me, it doesn't touch real life. So it takes a lot of strength for me to engage in his world, even though I don't see how this is relating to real life. And my older sister always says, she just says I was always a little adult. Like I always thought, you know, I didn't play with dolls. My mind is very analytical. So even with this exercise, it's like, well, we're not really building a house, right? So it's hard for me to get engaged and be, you know, really intensely concerned with things that don't seem very relevant to real life beyond the engagement of the social piece of it. So those have been two, like last week's that I really felt that because I saw a lot of emotional charges and a lot of engagement, and because I know I can be, but why invest myself in that if it's not real life?
We learned not how to build something that that's the truth. I think our process was good. We took time and I had an initial concept, and I think we kind of all built upon it and decided on a path forward. I think we were ambitious trying to incorporate the string into the base. I think if we were to do it again, we would leave the string alone, let it, sit out. But we were trying to incorporate everything. But I think it was good. We all had our hands on the project at one time. We were trying to make it work because we knew it was going to be flimsy, and we tried to do what we could to make it work, and it wasn't successful, but I guarantee you that we would be successful on our next go around.
It took us a while because we're all strategic, but we have different, strengths. So I think what happened was we underestimated the weight of the marshmallow. We were too busy trying to get the base in instead of really just like trying to. And the noodles were so flimsy, so it didn't help us. But when it fell, we felt like we had progress. But then when y'all started saying 30 seconds and 2 seconds, I think that's when we knew it was gonna come apart.
So we did pretty good for the most part. We had a great foundation, and then we had like a second story, and we had the marshmallows. So we're like, okay, at this point we're good. And then we're like, okay, let's shoot for the stars. So we know we're gonna do the same tactic. So we added another layer, and all of us, we were like, yes, we're doing good. And you can literally see our personality, because my friend over here, he was like, oh my God, look at the other team is beating. But Anna was like, nah, man, just focus on ours. So you can clearly see it in our the strength of each other. And then he was like, don't touch the table, you guys, just don't touch the table, So you can clearly see it, and both the maximizers over here were like, okay, we're doing good. So our team worked really well. I mean, I think what failed us was time, because we had such an idea for the string. David was like, okay, let's pull the string so it can be like that. But that was just such a last minute thing. So we're like, okay, let's put that. And I think just time. I think pressure is what killed us, because we were like, let's just add. But we had a strong foundation. So I feel like we did successfully, even though it came down, because we put it up. We had it big. We had the marshmallow was there, just time. And
I think that's what is applicable in real life for me. Oftentimes I see what we're building is so small, and then I look over, it's like, oh my God, they're gonna beat us, and it's so easy to compare yourself to somebody who seems like they're doing better than you, and it looked like, oh my God, they're definitely gonna win, and then I'm sorry, but it came crashing down. But I think that, I'm sorry, I should have used better. I'm sorry, but in real life, I do that in real life. I compare myself to other people that seem like they're successful, but you don't know what's going on in the background, what it really looks like, and even though.
So you felt like you were looking at others?
I was like, no, I think we should make it triangular.
Her and I were just like, no.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I can talk on that too.
Yeah. All right, Bio, wrap us up.
Yeah, and that's very profound because, I was guilty of that. So we were building, we were going up, over ambitious. And I looked at you guys, I was like, this is not so high. They can't win. We probably gonna win, right? So that was me comparing I was comparing what we were building to what you guys were building. And you guys eventually won because, you guys won. So to real life, it's like, focus on yourself. Focus on what is in front of you. And I'm guilty, I'll just put it on Instagram, for example. I'm in real estate, so I look at all the real estate guys, damn, this guy bought an apartment building, and I'm going crazy in my head, and God is telling me, dude, look at what you got going on. Focus on yourself. So, like she said, whatever you have in your world, whatever God has given you as your gift or your blessings, focus on that. God is taking you places with your own gift, your blessings. What other people have going on, that is none of your business. Just focus on yourself.
I like the fact that you were looking at that table. So what's interesting about this exercise, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I didn't hear her say that you all couldn't work together. So rather than focusing on collaboration, there was this spirit of competition. And I think that sometimes that can get in the way of our gifts when we're so fixated on competing with the next person or the next team, rather than seeking to understand and learn from that team to say, how can we collaborate and create synergies and relationships to actually get to that goal together.
And so how many of you guys were trying to, when you first started the project, you really wanted to get the highest, right? So what happens when you do that group dynamics is that you must have a strong foundation before you can go and build on top of it. So what was happening is some of the analytical folks and the strategic folks were thinking about the foundation, while maybe some of the other folks were thinking about how is this going to get us to the highest level because we want to win. But you got to remember, winning is about having the strongest foundation, and winning doesn't oftentimes happen in group dynamics because it looked like you are the winner, right? Most people was watching the other teams to see if they were going to beat them, competition. And by looking at the competition, you are not focused on your gift. So the Bible says that your gift will make room for you. One thing you cannot do in real business is if you focus on the returns, the performance, like money, you're going to not be focused on the gift, and therefore you're going to get something other than what you can ultimately have in life. So you got to make sure that the reason that you're in these team concepts or projects is that the dynamics have to come together in such a way that they build something greater than you could have done on your own. Like Jesus when he had the 12 disciples, right? He knew exactly where each one of them came from, right? From fishing to tax collecting to wherever it was. But what he was building was a greater team. He could see the greater, but he had to make sure that the foundation of the work was solid enough to be able to build on it, not for that time only, but for 2023 and beyond. So in group dynamics, you have to make sure that the foundation is there, right? You got to focus on the foundation, because even though you get that marshmallow to the top, you may have to try to hold it, right? Because it doesn't have the strength to stand on its own. So make sure that the foundation is always solid enough to hold it. Even when you walk away, we have to leave it better than we found it.
Thank you for sharing, and I hope everybody enjoyed this. I hope you learned a few things. You know, one of the things that we want to make sure we do is walk in our strengths. What do we bring to the table? What do we bring to a team? What are the things that we do naturally? Here's the thing about strengths. You may recognize that you have a strength, or you may not fully recognize it. You may see something in your list, you go, oh, that doesn't sound like it. But you naturally do these things. Adiola, where's Adiola? You were saying that earlier. You said, you know, I influence people all the time, but influencer is not one of my categories. There may be skills that you've developed over time that aren't necessarily that natural first thing, but you've learned, and skills on top of your strengths. So there's a lot that we can do with that. I want to tell you a quick story. You know, one of the things that you can see in business a lot of times is people go, man, profit margin. Profit margin is everything. It's all about making money, right? Right? But a business has a purpose. A company, an organization has a purpose more than just making money. See, making profit in a business is like cycling blood in your body. You don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to cycle blood today. You naturally do that while you're doing whatever you're purposed for. So the blood is what gives you life, so you can actually do the purpose with your body. Your business or a company, their blood cycle is profit margin. It is making money. But that's not the purpose of the company. And so staying focused on that is important. And then the other thing is this, with our gifts, I want to tell you a quick story. So I coached high school basketball. This is not my team, but this is a visual. I coached high school basketball for 9 years, almost a decade in my 20s. It started when I was 19 years old, coaching high school basketball. And I remember when I was 23 years old, 4th season in, we were playing in the state semifinals. And I watched the team that we were playing 2 nights before, and I watched one of the ball players on the team was really, really, really talented. And we had gone almost undefeated that season. We were 22-3. And we had run through our conference tournament, and we had beaten up on all the teams that we had in our conference, and we won the championship game by almost 30 points. And so we had done really well with who we were and our identity as a team that year. We had a very specific identity on offense and defense that we ran all the time. And we got to the state semifinal game, and I watched the team 2 nights before, and I thought, I don't think we can beat this team playing our game. So the day before the semifinal game, I decided to change our game plan and our strategy. So we get to the game, at halftime we're down 22-4. And I went into the locker room at halftime and I looked at the guys and I said, look, we got nothing to lose. We're down by almost 20, state semifinal game. So we get in the second half, we come roaring back. With a minute and a half left, we have the ball on the free throw line, we're down by 3. And the kid that I was worried about was their point guard. We could not make him, our defense was basically like, just force them to make mistakes the whole game. This kid never made mistakes. So I thought, we can't play our defense because he's gonna torch us. He made 9 big mistakes in the second half. And I remember walking in the locker room, we lost by 2 points, and I remember walking in the locker room knowing we were the better team. And I looked at my players with tears in my eyes and I said, this is the last time I will ever change who we are as a leader. Because what we did well got us here, and we should have beat that team. And I apologized to them, and I said, I took from you a state championship. They ended up beating the team the next day by 30 points. We could have easily won a state title. And I promised myself at 23 years old, I would never, ever, ever change identity again as a leader. I'm not gonna be that person. I'm not gonna live in fear. Whatever gift, whatever strength is yours, use that. Whatever God has given to you, thank you, Dr. Dokes. Whatever God has given to you, see, the thing is sometimes we look at it and we go, I don't know if my strength will get me there in this position. And I just want to encourage you and reinforce, you have exactly what you need for what God has called you to do. And so for us, the temptation is compare. The temptation is to live in fear. Well, I don't know if my gift has what it takes. Your gift and strength absolutely has what it takes to fulfill the mission. So when we talk about strengths, the foundation is everything. Knowing who we are, knowing what we've been gifted for, and then walking that out and allowing God to empower those wherever we are in our career, in our family, in a relationship, parenting, whatever it may be, your business, whatever it may be, your strengths will get you there because God has ordained it for that to be the case. And so I was in Kids Life 10 years ago, and then we're going to pray it in. Kids Life years ago, and I came up to a teacher who was just killing the game. She was dominating in Kids Life. She had one of the best classes. And I was the elementary director. We got here in 2012. I was the elementary director, and I said, hey, I want you to move up to a ministry leader. I want you to run the whole room. And she looked at me in the face and she said, I'm not going to do that. And I went, why? And she said, because I know what my strengths are. Managing the team is not my strength. Teaching in the room with the kids is my strength. And I went, okay. She was leading right where she was. She didn't move up to be a manager. I worked for Buffalo Wild Wings years ago in college. I was a chef at Buffalo Wild Wings. And I've had a lot of jobs. I made a list last night. It's very long. A lot of jobs. A chef is a cook, whatever. Oh, okay. All right. Going in on us here. Hurts. That's good, man. But I was being diplomatic. No, and I was a cook. And there was a young man who had moved down to Orlando. I lived in Orlando, Florida at the time, and he moved from Boston. He had a bunch of jobs. And he was a cook there, and he was the best we had. And the general manager came to him one day and said, hey, I want you to move up to be a management position. And he said, how about this? How about you give me the job of training every single person that touches food in this restaurant and just double my pay? I'm not meant to be a manager, but I can teach every single person how to do everything back here. And I went, that's somebody who knows what they do well. So anyways, our strengths were given to us to know what we do well. And sometimes switching position is not the answer. Sometimes staying right where you are and your boss going, I'm going to pay you double for what you do really well. or I'm going to have you help train people, right? So I think for us, excuse my voice, I think for us, knowing our strengths and then understanding the people around us and what their strengths are in leadership. Because in leadership, when you know what your strengths are, you know who you need to surround yourself with. You know who you need to surround yourself with. And that's a powerful tool. When everybody is in synergy together, great things can happen. Regardless of how much talent or not talent or all of those things, chemistry and synergy is everything. I've seen some very talented teams not successful because they weren't cohesive. They didn't work together with their strengths. They competed too much. So that cohesion is everything. I'm going to pray and end, and the next week we'll talk about Rule Your Day. We have some more weeks coming up where we have some open time. We may come back to some of these discussions and talk more about it. Because I think it's very important for us to know who we are, what we've been gifted for, and then walking out in those in confidence. Listen, the two things we want everybody to walk away from the table with at the end of the 6 months is one, confidence. Leadership is about confidence stepping out. And then number two is process. It's not just process of what you do, it's process of how we think. In leadership, it starts with how you think first and then what you do. So how we think, we start with that foundation. I love it. Let's pray. Father, we love you. We thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for the gifts, the abilities, the skills, the talents, the anointing that you've given to us in the workplace, in the family, in the home, as friends, in relationships, whatever it may be. Father, thank you for giving us the giftings that we have to bless and serve those around us. You have given us strengths to make a mark in the world. And tonight, Father, we want to recommit ourselves. We want to recommit ourselves to understanding who you've made us to be and embracing that with courage. Tonight, Father, help us as we drive home. Help us to remember that you have given us these things. You have wired us a certain way to give you the glory and to bless those around us. And then our abilities and our strengths are not a setback. They are a setup for your destiny. And so, Father, tonight, remind us that we're here to use these to serve and love other people. In Jesus' name. Everybody said? Amen.